Welcome, viewers and listeners, to the Total Football Analysis EPL podcast. We are the Thinking Fans podcast. Each week, we get together with our besties, who are current pro players, real coaches, academics, and stat heads. In the end, we want to provide thoughtful, hot takes about football. Today, I'm joined by Premier League analyst Harshal Patel. In addition, I'm joined by Sam Brotherton, a professional center back and cleanup on aisle 9 scrubber from North Carolina FC. Finally, I'm joined by Dre Fortune, a professional midfielder for North Carolina FC and teller of the future. I am host Chris Mumford, known as the Professor. Bella ciao. During the second week of the restart, teams have found their groove. Against Liverpool, Man City put down a marker for next season. Against Crystal Palace, Leicester righted the ship with a precarious 3-point hold on a Champions League spot. Man U was feeling the young forward love as they trounced through relegation-threatened teams. Even Arsenal found its mojo with several wins. That is not to say that all was well. Chelsea got stumped by a London rival, while the Wolves were upended by some Londoners as well. The hand of VAR impacted the fate of Tottenham Sheffield United. Meanwhile, relegation-threatened teams went 2-1-10 this week. Ouch! Let's get into the delicious details. Harshal, can you get us started with the Brighton-Man U game?
Absolutely, Chris. And as a Manchester United fan, it's been a pretty good week looking at the game against Brighton, and then again when we talk about Bournemouth game as well. And what's been interesting for me is that we've seen United struggle a little bit against teams where they have the majority of possession. We've all seen how Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has set up United to do well against the likes of City and Arsenal and even Liverpool, who dominate the ball, and then United can counter. But earlier on in the season, the Red Devils were sort of struggling against teams which sat back and allowed United most of the ball. Even in this game, in the game against Brighton, I believe United had about 60-odd% of possession. But they used it really well, which is what I was really happy to see. Solskjaer named the same starting 11 that he had done in the previous game. And we saw the same tactic where Nemanja Matic was dropping into the back three. Dropping into the centre-backs to make it a back three. And that was allowing Paul Pogba to get up higher up the pitch and allowing Bruno Fernandes to be able to affect the play in the final third. And then you had the fullbacks in Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw also getting up forward, which was again then letting Mason Greenwood, Marcus Rashford, and Bruno Fernandes get into those half spaces, which we've spoken about as being so important. So it was a really good performance from United in terms of controlling possession, creating chances. And in the second half, when Brighton changed their formation and actually had more of the ball, United tore them apart on the counter-attack. And we saw that for the third goal, where Matic just played that beautiful pass out to Greenwood, who ran on, crossed it, and then Fernandes scored. So United are showing that they have all the bits and pieces that they could sort of, that a team needs in their attack and in possession to break down any sort of team.
Dre, what's your take on Greenwood's development and how Bruno is finding his groove?
I think Greenwood's definitely emerging and showing that he's very clinical in front of goal, both left and right foot. He scored some really quality goals this week. I think the one against Brighton was well taken. Good individual effort, running at his defender and creating space for a shot, and snuck it near post. I think he fooled the keeper a little bit there from that angle. Bruno Fernandes is, since he's came into the team, he's been really influential in the midfield. Helps them create chances. He can score goals. He's a midfielder that Man U really needed. So I think they're all starting to work well together. And when they need individual efforts, they're all capable of providing them.
Sam, I wanted to break down that third goal. It was a Matic to Rashford to Bruno. Basically, 3 passes, 5 touches, and a beautiful finish. Where was Brighton's defense in that situation? What's your take on what happened there?
Yeah, they were definitely caught in transition. I think you said you mentioned the kind of the passing sequence, but the speed with that happened was pretty impressive from United. So yeah, Brighton were caught a little bit out of position, but also I think if you look at the ball and the finish, obviously Fernandes hits it one time. It doesn't give much time for the Brighton defense to kind of recover. So yeah, I think you have to give them United a little bit of credit in that instance. And yeah, I don't know. As a goalkeeper, you're pointing a lot of fingers at defenders here, but Matt Ryan did lead a couple on his near post earlier, so it kind of affected the flow of the game. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, the near post thing I've mentioned before is like pulling a scab off of a goalkeeper's arm. I mean, it's just painful, because there's such an important kernel of truth to that. I think the rule a keeper should never get beat at the near post is a fine rule to have if you don't mind giving up extra goals in the far post. So I think the trick is discretion. I think in those particular circumstances, it's hard to say. I'd probably in the instances we talked about is that near post. But if you overplay your near post so much, you're going to give it up on the far post. It really kind of comes down to the individual situation there.
It's fair enough. I know Dre enjoys shouting at a goalie when he gets beat by his near post. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's becoming more of a mind game as well. I mean, particularly for Greenwood's goal, as he shifts the ball to his left foot, obviously the keeper is, going to shift a bit to the far post, anticipating that. And as an attacking player, I think you also have to respect, being aware of that and then taking advantage of that situation.
Well, in that particular goal, that the ball went through the legs of the defender, right? Mm-hmm. And you've also got to keep in mind, if you get beat to the near post, that's because it's getting hammered there, right? And if you don't have a sight line and there's a defender there and it goes through the legs of the defender, it's a little hard for the keeper to kind of get to lay blame on that. In that situation, I just chalked that up to Greenwood and just handled that brilliantly. That's one of those good shot. You pick up the ball out of the net and you say, "Let's go, team."
It's actually sorry, go on, Sam.
No, you go ahead, Harshal.
I was saying that's actually become a bit of a trademark for Greenwood. He's done that earlier in the season as well. I can't remember the team, but it was in the Europa League where he did a similar finish, came in from the right, made it seem as if he'd go for the far post and snuck it in at the near post. And he's completely two-footed, and we'll talk about that later on when we speak about the Bournemouth game as well. That his finishing ability he's already a very, very good finisher, even though he's just 18 years old.
Yeah, and I'd say that second goal, the Fernandez shot just outside the 18 where nobody picks him up and there's traffic going on. I don't get the sense that the keeper had a great sight line there. And in those situations, when I have a bad sight line, I take two massive steps up and I hope like heck that ball hits me in the chest or I can get a hand to it. There are a couple instances in games this week where defenders were sitting back kind of deep and just a lot of noise going on in front of you. It's hard to find the signal of that shot once it gets taken. So let's go ahead and move on to the next game, which was the Chelsea-West Ham. We reserve this for David Seymour. We may have a moment of silence or a few seconds of silence for David, who couldn't join us today. But Harshal is going to pick up the slack and tell us what happened in that game.
I think more than moments of silence, I think it's moments of celebration because his team, West Ham, absolutely pulled that one out. I mean, I don't think anybody was expecting a West Ham win there, even though it is a London derby and it's sort of feistier and more competitive than usual.
Mm-hmm.
This win for West Ham, I think, is almost guaranteed them Premier League safety because they've got 3 points, which the other teams around them aren't picking up, and they're out of the relegation zone, and they're 5 points clear at the moment. They're 5 points clear of the relegation zone at the moment. So I really think that this win could help them stay in the league. But looking back at the game, you'd have expected West Ham to stay, because you've seen Chelsea have problems against teams with a deep block. I actually expected West Ham to do that and stay deep, but they actually started out by pressing quite high up the pitch. They only moved back into a sort of defensive deep block midway through the game, but they actually came out and were looking to engage Chelsea high up the pitch. And I wouldn't really say, from a tactical point of view, I wouldn't really say that Chelsea got anything wrong in that sense, but it came down to individual errors. I think all 3 goals that West Ham scored, and they had one that was disallowed on the corner as well, were down to sort of disorganization at set pieces and individual mistakes where for example, for Yarmolenko's goal, I think Rudiger was at fault in terms of how he was covering Yarmolenko, and Yarmolenko is left-footed, but he allowed him the space to get that shot away. And as for set pieces, it's well documented that Chelsea have a problem defending set pieces. And Frank Lampard actually said post-match that Chelsea need to sign players who are taller, because they have, I mean, that's literally all they could do at the moment to stop their set piece issues, because they've got some really poor marking schemes going on as well. You had, I think, Cesar Azpilicueta marking Thomas Soucek, who got the first goal for West Ham, and there's easily a 6 to 8 inch difference in height between the two of them. So there was a lot of mismatch going on at set pieces, and there were individual errors. But if I were a Chelsea fan, I wouldn't really worry too much, because I didn't really see too much wrong tactically. There were individual errors, and they probably need to work out their set piece deficiencies, but it was still a decent performance from them. Although West Ham obviously played better.
Sam, what's your take on the need for taller defenders, or can that be fixed with better tactics or technique?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough, because I think Azpilicueta was actually pretty tight to Soucek on the goal. I think it's hard to say he wasn't marking or he wasn't tight. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could consider more of a zonal system instead of going man to man and having the taller players like Rudiger in there and asking them to go and find the ball and attack it. So yeah, it's difficult. I think Kepa also comes out off his line and kind of gets caught in no man's land. A little bit. So yeah, I don't know. Taller players are obviously going to be more beneficial at set pieces, but you want good players at the end of the day, not just tall players. So that's kind of one factor to consider.
Okay, and just for the record, Sam, how tall are you?
6'2".
Cool. Good to know. And what was your take on Rudiger on that last goal with Yarmolenko?
Yeah, I mean, as Harshal said, Yarmolenko is a left-footed player, so obviously in an ideal world, you want to force him away from the goal onto his right foot. I think Rudiger tries to do that. When you have a forward kind of running full pace at you, it's more difficult than maybe it looks. Or even when you know, like, maybe Yarmolenko is going to cut inside on his left foot, that's a likely kind of outcome. It's tough to defend. So yeah, I mean, I think he could have done better, obviously, in that situation. But I think you've also got to consider, like, it's pretty difficult.
I would imagine. Sorry, Dre. I would imagine in the 80th minute, remembering that he's left-footed and could come inside, and you're a little out of position. You kind of got to give the defender the benefit of the doubt there. But Dre, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to kind of agree with that. I think it's a little bit tough. I mean, if you look at the goal, Chelsea's 2v1 at the back, and then West Ham's wide players break, and it seems like none of Chelsea's midfield really recover, so it becomes 3v2. And Rudiger's always in recovery mode at that point. And, at this level, Yarmolenko's inside the box at that point. You can't really, you want to force him right, but at the same time, I mean, at this level, I'm sure he's capable of scoring with either foot from that close to the goal. So it's really difficult to say that, necessarily say he's at fault. But, I mean, I think he can definitely try to get a little tighter, try to keep him on his right foot. But yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult.
I gotcha. Well, good. Well, let's go ahead and shift over to the Tottenham-Sheffield United match. Harshal, walk us through that, please.
Yeah, so this one, I think VAR had actually quite a bit of impact in this game. We saw Harry Kane's goal being ruled out because the ball in the build-up, the ball hit Lucas Moura's arm, who was on the floor. And in my opinion, that was not a handball. I mean, the ball was literally hit at him when he was on the floor, and obviously he's not really looking to handle the ball there. And we saw quite a few other instances of that sort of thing happening in the Premier League this weekend as well, where handball was given for balls that were hit at pace at players who really couldn't get their arms out of their way. And I think there needs to be, I think the law needs to be changed, because it's not that the VAR is doing anything wrong. It's just the way that the law is worded at the moment that makes these handball offenses when they shouldn't be. But coming back to the tactics in this game, I thought Mourinho might have missed a trick in terms of the makeup of his attacking lineup, because he started with Steven Bergwijn, Lucas Moura, and Heung-min Son, all three of them behind Harry Kane, and he had Sissoko and Lo Celso in midfield. So what that did was that all three of the guys playing behind Harry Kane are wingers. So they look to get, obviously, onto the wider areas. They're not, and I think Bergwijn was the player playing as the number 10 as such, but he's not a number 10. And we saw a lot of times where Spurs could have created chances because they had managed to get in behind the Sheffield United midfield. But the guys who were on the ball or the guys who were receiving the ball, their body position or their orientation was not in the correct way to be able to take advantage of that sort of thing. Whereas I think if it was a Dele Alli or even a Lo Celso was playing, further up the pitch, they're much more accustomed to playing in that sort of position and playing as either a one-time pass, a first-time pass, or receiving the ball in a way where they can then play Harry Kane through or play one of the wingers through. All three of these guys are not used to playing in those sort of areas. And I think Mourinho might have missed a trick, or I think it just came down to the personnel maybe not suiting the attacking positions they were put in. But Sheffield United did really well. I think Spurs, the defending for two of the goals was horrible. They completely lost their players in the 6-yard box, which at this level I think is really criminal. And I think it was David McGoldrick's or Ollie McBurney. I don't remember which goal it was, but one where I think there were 3 Spurs players in the vicinity of the player on the ball who got on the ball. I think it was McBurney, and neither of them got anywhere close to him. So I think the defending was not really good from Spurs in that sense, and Sheffield United made them pay.
Sam, let's break those down. I mean, that first goal was Berga finished from 12 yards in traffic. It was cut back. There were ample defenders on the 6-yard line. What's your take on that particular goal?
Yeah, I thought the first goal was a good finish. Like you said, there was defenders available, and maybe they could have got a little more pressure on the ball. I was probably more concerned, not concerned, but I think there's more kind of blame to share on the second 2 goals, which were kind of similar in that they were kind of loose box defending.
Mm-hmm.
The defenders are in the box. You've got to get tight to your man. You got to get tight to the striker. You got to find him, and you got to let him. You can't let him get a shot off. And I think they haven't a couple of times. So that wasn't good. And I'm sure Mourinho was absolutely raging after the game because he prides himself on his defensive setup and kind of keeping clean sheets. And Spurs gave up some really soft goals.
Yeah. That first goal to me, I mean, the Tottenham defense was actually pretty well organized. They just happened to be on the 6, and there were 2 or 3 Sheffield United players sitting on the 12 waiting. The second goal, that Musa goal on 6, it seemed like Dyer was in the right position, which was between the ball and the player, but just kind of lost the sight line on him, and Musa was able to finish that. As far as that third goal, it was McBurney just seemed to be able to get to that near post half a second faster past the defender, whom I can't remember if it was Sissoko or who it was. But there you just maybe need to say to McBurney, good hustle on getting to that near post just a little bit faster. But I would likely agree with you that it seemed like some loose defending, and that third goal to the near post sometimes it's unfortunate. When defenders lose their man, that's when I think keepers get a little bent out of shape, because there's a tendency, including the keepers, to ball watch and keepers oftentimes will look at the ball. They won't shoulder check to see where the runs are being made so they can kind of anticipate where the ball is going to go. And that was also reflected in that final goal with Kane, that Son to Kane piece. But that's just, I think there's something that strikers have, that innate element to find the open space and be able to someone like a Kane can take the step at the right time to make sure they're the right time at the right place. Let's go ahead and switch gears, Sam. Tell us about the Liverpool-Man City game.
Yeah, I think it was a very exciting fixture. Kind of a little bit of the gloss got taken off of it after Liverpool had kind of already won the Premier League, but there was kind of a lot of stake still for both teams, with Liverpool kind of chasing Man City's records, and then Man City had a point to prove on their home turf. So I thought Liverpool really started the game pretty strongly. They came out, they were positive, they pressed, they counter-pressed, and they really kind of exploited Man City's high line. So they had a lot of opportunities. I think the big difference in the game was Man City were a lot more clinical. Gomez obviously makes a bit of a mistake for the penalty. Kind of risky to grab Sterling's shirt in the box, and then unfortunately from there Liverpool kind of folded a little bit. I would like to see them be a little bit more resilient and put up a fight, but I mean, at the end of the day, you have to appreciate they're playing such a good team as well. I thought it was interesting to note kind of how Man City played. They obviously started trying to play out the back early. They didn't have much success. Liverpool were kind of forcing turnovers, forcing them to make some mistakes, but they were really, really effective in transition in this game, which kind of isn't something we're used to seeing from a team coached by Pep. So yeah, that was interesting. I thought, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Dre, what was your take on the game?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that last piece in particular. I think City were really potent in transition, and typically you don't see that from them because they usually have the ball all the time. But they made really good use of those opportunities, and I think some really good individual plays. I mean, De Bruyne had an excellent performance. Sterling, Foden, they all really stepped up and provided goals when their team needed to. And I mean, I'm happy about it. Sam's probably not as a Liverpool fan, but yeah, I think City had a good little run out, and they definitely showed that they're not going to allow Liverpool to run away with the Premier League next year.
So what I was really struck by is Salah had just two amazing opportunities very early in the game, and Ederson makes a freakish save and just reminds us that he's Ederson, and then the other one goes off the woodwork, and that's kind of why you got to play soccer matches, right? Because of chance, the ball bounces a certain way. If one of those goes in, the composition of the game changes dramatically. Now, as you guys know, I'm a fan of goalkeepers in this particular case, and I'm a ginormous fan of Alisson. But I will say that if you could give some notes to Alisson, it would be on that fast break from Foden to Sterling. Gomez was on Sterling, and Alisson chose to come out, and his feet weren't set, and Sterling just wanted to get it on frame, and it was a bit of an ugly shot, and it just went to Alisson's right. Always that if he stayed set, he might have had an opportunity to stop that. That's also the same case to a lesser degree with that give and go Foden KDB to Foden. Alisson cuts off the angle beautifully, but his feet were still moving underneath him when the ball was moving. I don't even know if Alisson was able to set his feet, if he would have had a chance, because Foden was just so incredibly clinical on that. And Sam, I want to reiterate your point. I just find it so strange that seeing Man City not being able to build it out of the back, which demonstrates when Liverpool decides to gegenpress effectively, they're just absolutely ruthless. That being said, if I'm Real Madrid and or Bayern, I'm taking notes, realizing that Man City has got that counter in its pocket if it needs it. So, well, good. Well, let's go ahead and switch to the Man U Bournemouth game. Harshal, can you walk us through that, please?
Yeah, and as I said at the top of when we started off, that this was a good week to be a United fan, because yesterday's game was, again, United just showing that the club has the attacking power and the attacking threat to blow away teams. It's 16 games unbeaten now for Manchester United, and they've scored 41 goals in those 16 games. That's just over 2.5 goals a game. And yesterday's game, I think a lot of people are now getting on board with how good potentially Mason Greenwood can be. But people around the club and fans who sort of track the academy and all of that have been talking about Mason Greenwood for a while now, that he's one of the best players to come out of the academy, and he showed that yesterday. With both finishes, he is truly, like, you really don't see too many players who are adept at both feet, and he is one of them. If you've seen reports that have come out, and if you've been following him, you'll know that he takes set pieces with both feet. He takes penalties, free kicks, corners with both his left and his right foot. He is truly adept at scoring with either foot. And I thought another thing that was interesting yesterday was the way in which Martial, Rashford and Greenwood were interchanging positions. You were seeing Greenwood pop up on the left, Rashford going out to the right, Martial also floating up across the width of the pitch, which I think these three the front three that United have fielded in the past three games can really be a really sort of strong platform to build the club's attacking foundation on. Rashford and Martial have now got 20 goals for the season. Greenwood's got 15 goals for the season in all competitions. So there are some really exciting young players at that club and they're being backed up by the likes of Fernandes and Pogba, who are more experienced. And although I will say that we have spoken about sort of goalkeeping errors, and I think again David De Gea did not do himself any favors with the goal that Bournemouth scored, which opened the scoring, Junior Stanislas's goal. But other than that, I think it was a pretty good performance by United, and they're showing that they can, if not challenge for the title, they're certainly going to be in the race for the top four properly next season.
Dre, what's your take on that? I mean, more Greenwood, but then also that set piece from Bruno.
Yeah, I thought all the goals that Manu scored were pretty clinical. Greenwood, both opportunities he took very well, struck the ball very cleanly towards the far post, and just too powerful for the keeper to keep out. I mean, the first one he gets his hand on and he can't keep out the net, and the second one, it's just a great finish. Bruno, it's always interesting that free kicks from there will go to the keeper's far post and beat him. Keeper's, I guess, cheating again, not letting the wall do its job, but it's just very, very well placed, very well taken free kick, and rounded out a strong performance from Manu.
Yeah, what I'm really surprised from was that Bruno was able to get it up and down from 18 or 19 yards. From 24 or 25, you could kind of expect that. And maybe I need to look at the replays and see if the wall jumped or not. But I'm just usually from the 18, I'm thinking they got no shot on trying to get it up and down over the wall. I'm probably gonna overplay the far post because and then he's gonna just try to drive it as hard as he can. But somehow Bruno got it down from 18 or 19, and that was a head scratcher for me.
Chris, I think, at least in my opinion, I think Aaron Ramsdale's positioning was a little suspect there. He was too central. Mm-hmm. If you look back at the replay, I think he was too central. He maybe needed to be a bit more towards the far post. Because as you said, that is the likelier, I think, from that sort of position, if it's a right footer, which obviously Bruno is, you would expect him to go for the far post because the near post, as you said, is just, the distance is just too close for him to be able to get it up and over.
Yeah.
Up and down again, right? So you would expect him to go for the far post from there. So I thought Ramsdale was faulty in terms of his positioning. I thought had he been maybe 2 or 3 steps to his right, he probably would have saved it.
I gotcha. Good. Well, Dre, walk us through that, the Arsenal-Wolves game. That had some huge Champions League implications to it.
Yeah, very important game for the Champions League spots there. Arsenal and Wolves obviously pushing to try to make it up there. I thought it was a pretty, fairly even game. Arsenal was just more clinical in the end. They took the lead through a goal, his first goal for Saka. Tierney's been playing well, and he put in a cross that was deflected and ends up on Saka's foot, and he just finishes very well. And then, Wolves had a couple of chances to tie the game even. Adama Traore thought I had the best chance of the game, where he tries to lift it over the keeper, which was probably the only real opportunity he had in that situation. I think the keeper did a good job of covering the angles while coming out and closing them down, and defenders were getting back. And then the last goal, I just probably for me, my favorite goal of the week. Lacazette, after a strong one from Willock, he takes a brilliant first touch, puts it right into his path so that he can finish far post. I just thought the first touch on that goal was ridiculous. So, I really enjoyed seeing that, and I'm happy to see that they got 3 points.
Good. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and start to turn our attention to the upcoming games. And with that, staying in that vein, Dre, walk us through that Arsenal-Leicester matchup that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's another key game for Arsenal, key game for Leicester. Leicester managed to get 3 points last time out, and so I think they're both going to come into it with confidence and obviously pushing for those Champions League spots. And be interesting to see, how the game goes. I think it'll probably be another fairly even game. Leicester obviously like to counter, but Arsenal have been doing a fair bit of that recently, as opposed to keeping the ball like we like them to. So I think it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm fascinated, Sam. It seems like Arsenal's defensive organization has gotten tighter this last week, and I don't know if that's a Arteta thing or things just clicking or just random chance. Do you have a sense? Because Vardy is Vardy, and I don't know if anybody's going to be able to keep up with him. How do you?
Yeah, Vardy is dangerous, no doubt. I think we've seen kind of throughout all the teams the overall improvement in just quality and organization as the time has gone on. Obviously, the long break had a big effect on teams. I think Arsenal have also had so much inconsistencies kind of with their defensive partnerships, with just so many different players playing. And that's not necessarily been at their own fault. There's been a lot of injuries and things like that. But now they've kind of settling into a little bit more consistency. Obviously, Arteta trusts Luis. He likes Luis. He's given him a new deal. So I think that's helped kind of having some more consistency. And, yeah, I guess just time playing together. Yeah, I mean, Dre didn't talk about it, but obviously Arsenal fans, and I think the manager will be pleased, like thrilled they got a clean sheet. I think that's even more important than them scoring goals at this point in time. So, yeah, hopefully for Dre's sake, they can keep building on that.
Well, it's going to be interesting. I don't think Martinez has been a big step down from Leno. He came up with a couple of key saves in the last game. So that'll be interesting to see how that progresses along. Harshal, can you elaborate a bit on the Sheffield United Wolves game, another huge Champions League fixture?
I think what we've seen from Wolves in the game against Arsenal, at least, was a perfect example of how they don't. I mean, teams like the mid-table sides, which are pushing for sort of a place in Europe, they don't have the squad depth to compete with the teams at the top. At least I thought that Wolves looked a bit tired, but Nuno didn't really have too many options to bring off the bench. Whereas if you look at the likes of United, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, even Arsenal to an extent, they have a lot more squad depth. And I think we'll sort of see that playing out a lot more over the rest of the season, especially because we have 5 substitutes allowed. So there's a lot more quality that can be brought onto the pitch. And we've seen that with Sheffield United as well. We're seeing that with a lot of the other smaller teams as well. Burnley, for example, they've been naming 2 goalkeepers in their substitutes, and they've only been naming 7 or 8 substitutes other than the 9 that they're allowed, because they just don't have the depth. And that sort of thing is starting to play out a bit more. With this game, when you talk about Wolves and Sheffield United, I think it'll be a close one. Sheffield United will probably shade the possession battle, in my opinion, because Wolves do like to play on the counter. And I can see it being a tight 1-1 maybe. But to be honest, I think both these sides, Sheffield United are definitely out of the Champions League race, but even Wolves too. I think United and Chelsea are pulling away from them now. So probably a Europa League spot at best for both these sides. But again, that's something good, something quite tangible for both of them to try and fight for.
Okay, so that you said 1-1. Dre, I forgot to ask you, Arsenal-Leicester, what's your prediction on the match?
I think that might tie as well. Maybe 1-1, maybe 2-1. Either way, I can't really. I'm an Arsenal supporter, but I can't pull for them too much right now.
I think you're right. I think 2-1 either way is probably where I would shade towards. Sheffield Wolves. My take is both of those benches are kind of. I don't want to say this in a disrespectful way, but they're light. They're a bit threadbare, and it'll be interesting to see who it'll be one of attrition. Sam, what are your predictions on these games here, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I agree. The Arsenal-Leicester one is a tough one to call. Just in spite of Dre, I'm going to go 2-1 for Leicester. And then I think Sheffield United-Wolves is another good game, another tough one to call. I think it'll be close. I don't think there'll be many goals. So I'm probably going to go 2-1 to Sheffield United.
All right, good.
0-0.
0-0. Wow.
Good shout, actually, Dre. I'll give you that one. I think
have we actually had? I don't know. Have we had a goalless draw so far? I don't think there's been a 0-0 since the Premier League's return. Maybe one. I can't remember.
I think there was one. So let's switch our attention to Bournemouth, Tottenham, and Tottenham is pretty much sinking past even Europa, but But poor Bournemouth, they need a miracle. They need how a West Ham beat Chelsea sort of thing, and I wonder if Tottenham would be that person. Harshal, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you look at Bournemouth's upcoming games, and we've spoken about this earlier on the podcast as well, they've obviously got the game against Spurs. They play Leicester, they play Man City in their next 3 games. Then they've got Southampton and Everton in the last 2, which could be a little easier because both Southampton and Everton would probably don't really have much to play for, and they could have taken their foot off the gas a little bit, so that could help Bournemouth. But I mean, if they lose the next 3 games, they might just be technically relegated or sort of mathematically relegated by the time they get there. So they do need to pick up points from these 3 games. Mm-hmm. And I think the Spurs game could potentially be their biggest chance, or the Leicester game, depending on how Leicester's form goes, because even Leicester have been quite shaky. They really needed the 3 points they picked up against Palace this weekend.
Yeah.
In terms of tactics, I really think Mourinho needs to maybe change things up a little bit, play Lo Celso or Dele Alli as a number 10, because they're not getting a lot of midfield creativity going. And they do have Kane and Son, and they can pull off stuff individually, but you need to get them the ball, and that's not happening at the moment.
So what's your prediction?
Just to keep things interesting in the league, I'm going for the 2-1 Bournemouth win. Very unlikely, but yeah.
Wow. How about you?
Unlikely, but to keep things
interesting. How about you, Dre? What's your prediction?
I think Tottenham wins handily. I think 2 or 3-0 for Tottenham.
2 or 3-0, Sam?
It's a tough one to predict, but I think Tottenham will be too good as well. I'll go 2-0.
I'm going to go 3-1 Tottenham, even though I want Bournemouth to win. Desperately want them to win, but I'm not sure that it's going to happen right now. Mojo is not there. Norwich, West Ham, which has some pretty significant relegation implications. Can West Ham lift itself out of the danger zone? Harshal?
We'd spoken about this game. I mean, I remember David also saying that this game was going to be huge. But now when we come to it, Norwich and West Ham, there's a 10-point gap. Norwich are on 21 points, West Ham on 31. So I don't think it's, in the sense that I think Norwich are down. They're 7 points from safety. They've got just 5 games to make up that gap. And West Ham, that win that we spoke about earlier against Chelsea, I think that's done I think it's done enough, maybe a couple more points and they'll be safe. But from a tactical point of view and from how the game's going to go, I think Norwich, if I was Daniel Farke, I'd just throw the kitchen sink at it. I'd just tell them to go out and attack. And that is what they are obviously good at. They've shown this season that they can attack. It's the defending that's the problem. So I just say, just go out and attack and try and score 5 goals or 4 goals and make sure that you concede 1 less than you score, because you're not going to be able to do much by defending. You've not been able to defend all season, and this is the only chance you have to be able to nick something from the game. So Sam? I think it could be an entertaining one.
And so what did you say the score was going to be?
Maybe a 3-2 to West Ham.
3-2 to West Ham. Sam?
Yeah, I'll go 2-1 West Ham.
2-1 West Ham. Dre?
I think 2-1 West Ham as well. Yeah, I think West Ham will win.
I'm doing this with the heart. I think that West Ham is going to get beat 2-1. So
David's not going to be happy listening to
that. I speak the truth, especially to my friends. So, all right. Well, let's switch to the Sheffield United Chelsea match. Harshal, what are the 2 or 3 things we need to care about in this game?
Again, battle for European places. Chelsea are a point behind Leicester at the moment. Sheffield United have fallen off with, they're not really in the race for the Champions League, but the Europa League spot is up for grabs. So another interesting game, another one that has sort of ramifications at the top end of the table. I think Chelsea will be too strong. They've shown since the restart that they've been one of the better sides. I think Christian Pulisic is really turning it up, and he's done really well. He's got a couple of, he's laid on goals for some of his teammates, and he's showing the potential that Chelsea saw in him when they made that deal. So I think Chelsea will be too strong for Sheffield United. Probably a 2-0 win.
2-0 win. I wish we knew some 23 or 24-year-old professional players to get in their heads and figure out how to keep consistency. can those young guns of Chelsea keep any consistency? Dre, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to, every game is a new game. Every day of training is a new day of training. And you just have to keep that mindset and make sure that every time you go out, you strive to do your very best. And obviously there are obstacles in the way. There are outside factors, or, people talking and social media and all that stuff as well. But no, you just go out every single day and start fresh and try your very best. And I think that helps. That helps a lot.
Yeah. How about you, Sam? What's your take?
Yeah, I agree with what Dre said. Obviously, there's a lot of external factors, but you just have to control what you can control. And I think if you prepare in a consistent way for each and every day, every game, every training, then hopefully you'll kind of be able to put in consistent performances. Yeah, I think it's been great seeing Pulisic has kind of become more consistent. He's become a really consistent contributor for Chelsea, and I think he looks like, when you watch the games, one of their kind of go-to guys at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops and whether he can kind of keep that up.
I will tell you, I think you hit a great point on process, is really trying to focus on the process. And I know you're a big fan of Klopp, and that's what he really focuses on a lot. And his approach to things, I love how he said this week that they're not going to try to defend the title. They're going to attack the title, where you don't play not to lose, you play to win always. And I find that to be as useful in football as it is in doing startups and life in general. So you have to play to win.
Before we go on to the next, if there's another game we're previewing, I have a question for Sam and Dre, because obviously they play the game. You guys have obviously got the season starting up again. Do you think, and I'm saying this in context of the Premier League as well, do you think it's easier when there's a run of games where you maybe play like 4 games in 15 days or something like that, as a player, to sort of have that sort of rhythm where you're playing a game, then you've got training, and then you're playing a game again in 2-3 days? Or is the normal pace of the season where there are times where you might be playing, a game a week? Is that easier? Or do you think having such a quick turnaround of games is better for you as young players, and in terms of, keeping your consistency in terms of performance?
For me personally, I think I probably would prefer the kind of the rhythm of playing a game a week. The reason that I say that is because it allows you time on the training field. I think when you have a game coming every other day or every 3 days, it's kind of recovery, and then there's not much time to train. But it also depends, like if you've lost a game, then you're super excited. You want to get back out there as soon as possible. So I think there's pluses and minuses to both. Yeah, I kind of like having a schedule, a consistent routine, but that's just me personally. I don't know what Dre thinks.
It's a very interesting question. I've never actually thought about it. And I don't know. I think I kind of like when the games come a little bit quicker, I think, because then it seems like, I don't want to say it seems like it's all one game necessarily, but like it's right after another, and you just kind of keep that same flow and that same rhythm, and it doesn't necessarily get interrupted as much as it would when you have a full week of training. So I think I'd probably prefer if the games were a little bit quicker.
Interesting.
Yes, there's no definitive answer, Harshal.
Yeah.
Actually, you are.
I guess we'll see once you guys get back on the pitch. What works out for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your prediction, Harshal, on the Sheffield United Chelsea game? What's the scoreline?
I'd say 2-0 Chelsea.
Dre?
3-0 Chelsea.
Sam?
4-0 Chelsea? Nah. I think Chelsea will win. I'll go 3-1.
I'm going to go 3-2 Chelsea. So, all right. Well, let's turn our attention to the last game that we're going to preview, which is the Tottenham Arsenal. Dre, can you walk us through that? What do you expect to see?
Yeah. Obviously, the game's important for, again, top 4 spots. Tottenham's a bit further behind, obviously, but Arsenal's still pushing for it. But even with that aside, North London derbies are very huge games regardless of what's at stake. So I think it's going to be a game everybody's up for, a very feisty game. Kind of think it can go either way. I mean, right now Tottenham's struggling a bit more. Arsenal's on, I think, 4 games in a row, right, Sammy? So I think they're doing quite well right now. I think I'll have Arsenal maybe 2-1 in that game.
Sam, what's your take?
Yeah, I gotta agree with my friend Dre here. I think Tottenham. I just don't know what to say about them at this point in time. I think they're really struggling for an identity. I think Arsenal are figuring things out. So yeah, I like his shout of 2-1. I'll go for 1-0 to the Gunners.
Harshal?
I'm going to go the other way. Obviously, just to provide a bit of contrarian opinion here, because as much as, I think Mourinho doesn't really have it um, at the top level, to succeed at the top level consistently, but I think he still pulls it out for these big games. And I think obviously the North London derby, huge game. I think he'll pull something out of the hat, and I think Spurs will edge it just because of him and his experience of having managed big teams in these sort of big matches. So I'm probably going to go 2-1 to Spurs.
I'm going to go in the other direction. I'm going to go 3-1 Arsenal. I really think that the Tottenham defense, as with Dyer as that center back, needs a little more time. Needs some reps in. I'm not ready to throw Dyer under the bus. I think he needs to get some reps in and kind of see where things go, because he is playing in a fairly new position. So we're going to see where things go with that. So 3-1, you heard it from me first, guys. So I'd like to turn our attention to what the run-in's going to look like here. So as you guys can see, basically, Man U has got a nice little set of matches that they're going to have to work through here. They've got the easiest schedule. I will say that Wolves also seem to have an easy schedule, right? The cut, if it's at 0 where Man U is sitting, Leicester is 3 points above it, Chelsea's 2, Wolves are -3, Arsenal's a surprising -6, Sheffield's a -7, and Tottenham's a -10. So if Man U and Wolves have the easiest schedule going forward, Chelsea's going to have to play some Liverpool along the path. Do keep in mind these do reflect some of the FA Cup semifinal games, because I do think it's going to have an impact on their Premier League performance. The folks who are going to have it the hardest are going to be Arsenal. They're going to have a tough go at it as well, particularly with Leicester, Tottenham, Liverpool. That's a murderer's row right there. And then Sheffield's going to have their hands full with the Wolves, Chelsea, and Leicester in there. So any thoughts on that, guys?
I think, as we said earlier, United have an easy schedule. And although these, again, we've seen earlier how United can struggle against smaller teams. But the Brighton and the Bournemouth game show that they might just be able to have the sort of creative ability and obviously the finishing ability to be able to beat these teams, as well as they were beating the likes of City and Liverpool and Spurs and all of those big teams. So, yeah, I think earlier it might have been a bit of a concern that because United weren't really doing well against the smaller teams, but if you look at the current run of form, I think United might just be able to sneak even above Chelsea. But it's going to be a real fight down to the last game, I think, and that semi-final is also going to be really, really tough. United have beaten Chelsea, I think, thrice this season, twice in the league and in the Carabao Cup. Mm-hmm. So Solskjaer will want to obviously carry that record on and do a sort of clean sweep over Chelsea. That FA Cup semi is also looking really, really, really sort of intriguing and fun.
Dre, does anything jump off the page for you on this?
Yeah, the fact that Arsenal's in yellow and not red, I don't really like that. No, I think the table stays pretty much like this. I think maybe Arsenal jumps over Wolves. But yeah, other than that, I think it stays just about like this. I think it's smooth sailing for Man U all the way out. Chelsea's been playing well, so I think they'll keep that run of form, and I think everything just stays just like this.
Okay, so that means that Leicester, Chelsea, and Man U stay up with Liverpool. Sam, do you have any different opinions?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned for Leicester. I think they have some difficult games. They're kind of not in a great run of form. I think there's potential for them to slip a little bit. Obviously, they're positioned pretty well right now. So that I think they'll be an interesting team to follow, where they can kind of hang on, make it towards the end of the season, and kind of looking at the fixtures. I wonder if Wolves can maybe put a run together. I think they may be a wild card, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I agree. I don't think there'll be too much movement, but I think there's still some twists and turns to come.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, Arsenal's coming back into form. Leicester's playing Arsenal. They're playing Sheffield United, and they're playing Tottenham.
Yeah.
And then they've got Man U at the end. And the only fairly easy match or perceived match would be Bournemouth. So we'll see what happens there. So let's have a quick look at what's happening at the bottom of the table. And can y'all see that?
Yep.
So really kind of the key takeaways are Brighton seems to have done a really fantastic job in the last couple of weeks or so with a couple of key signature wins. They're nine points above. West Ham is clawing their way. They're kind of at 3 points. And Watford is just above the cut, 1 point above. Bournemouth and Aston Villa are tied. And then Norwich is 6 points behind. As far as fixtures going forward, the folks that have it the easiest are West Ham, which will have difficult games with Burnley and Man U, but then they're playing Norwich, Watford, and Aston Villa. Those are going to be flat out head-to-head, must-win sort of games. While the folks that have it the hardest are the poor cherries who are going to have to play Tottenham, Leicester, and Man City before they finish up with Southampton and Everton. So they've got really tough schedule. They're playing top of the table and kind of the 10 to 15 range teams there. Harshal, what's your take on the relegation situation?
Yeah, as you said, Brighton have done more than enough. I don't think they're going to be in trouble. West Ham also, I think that win against Chelsea has really given them the points they needed and a couple of points more, and they'll be safe, I think. And they do have a pretty easy schedule in terms of the positioning of the teams, but obviously Norwich and Watford and even Aston Villa are all in the bottom three, as we can see, and they're going to be fighting for points. So I don't think they're going to be easy games as such. But yeah, a win in any of these games for West Ham, and they're safe completely. I don't think they need to be worried. They just need to pick up one win, I think. And then it comes down to Watford, Bournemouth, and Aston Villa, because I think Norwich have left it too late. Unless they can pull a rabbit out of the hat, I think they need to win their next two games. If you look, they're playing Watford and West Ham, who are direct sort of rivals for relegation. If they can win those two games, then they're right back in it. But if not, then I think Norwich are done, and then it's just two out of Watford, Bournemouth, and Aston Villa, and who can sort of pull out a win somewhere or pull out a couple of draws and all of that.
Sam, do you have any thoughts on the relegation battle?
Yeah, I tend to agree with a lot of what Harshal said. I think Brighton are going to be safe. I think Norwich have probably done for. So yeah, I think West Ham will also probably, with their kind of fortuitous or a little easier schedule, I think they'll be able to stay up. So I think it really comes down to a 3-horse race for kind of one spot for safety between Watford, Bournemouth, and Aston Villa, which will be interesting to watch. I think, yeah, it was Harshal made a great point that just because a game looks easy on paper, I think when teams are really fighting for relegation at the end of the season, then it's a tough game, and there's so much on the line that these games become really difficult. So it's hard to predict. Yeah, but it'll be fun to watch.
Good. Trey, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's extremely unpredictable, actually. I mean, I'm looking at, for example, West Ham's schedule. Obviously, they're playing 3 teams that are right down here with them, and those games are going to be extremely difficult because both teams are fighting, for those points that are very important. I think Brighton's safe, yeah. I'm really interested to see how it plays out, because with these teams all playing each other, you never know what's going to happen. You have no idea who's going to come out ready on the day and who might not. So very interesting couple of weeks we have ahead of us here.
Good. Well, so as we begin to wrap up the podcast, I'm curious, we're 2 weeks in, we've got about 3 weeks left, a lot of football. I will tell you, I'm a little surprised that there haven't been more injuries. I would have thought this week the rubber would have hit the road. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen this week vis-a-vis injuries. I am going to keep an eye on those near post goals as you guys are alerting me towards. And it'll be interesting to see. The first week, it seemed like defenses seem to have the mild advantage. I'm curious to see if fatigue's going to start setting in, where it's more about men not getting picked up than anything else, just out of flat out fatigue. I think as far as other storylines, the Man U offense, will they be able to keep their consistency along with Chelsea? Because I will tell you, I am very excited about the youth movement at Chelsea and Man U as a neutral. I will tell you guys, an X factor is going to be, if you believe Pep, who thinks that Man City will be vindicated, then all of a sudden there's one less spot for everybody, and Man U might be outside of the fishbowl when it comes to that. Harshal, do you have any kind of storylines that you're going to be keeping an eye on this week?
So as a United fan, obviously I've been happy with how the week has gone, and I'm going to, as you said, keep an eye on how United are doing, and obviously that attack which has suddenly clicked and we're scoring a bunch of goals and got some really good young players doing that. So, and again, as you said, Pep seems really confident that that City are going to be vindicated and that they're going to win their appeal against their Champions League ban. So then it comes down to 4th place, and 5th place might not be enough. Although United are still in the Europa League, which is going to play out in August, and the winners of the Europa League also get a spot in the Champions League. So there is that to consider as well. But that's in August once the Premier League is done. So in terms of Premier League storylines, yeah, I think Leicester are struggling. They did pick up a much needed win, but they were really struggling before that. And I think there might just be a chance that they slip out if Chelsea and United can keep their form up. And otherwise, in terms of the relegation battle, as Sam mentioned earlier, some of these games, when they play when teams that are in there and are playing against each other, anything can happen. And with VAR, with sort of all of that going on as well, I think it's going to be a dramatic end to the season. We could see some things happen which we didn't expect, and maybe some teams which probably looked to get sort of didn't look like having any hope might just be able to put a run together and get out of there. So I'm looking for that sort of thing to happen.
Right. Well, I hope that the good Lord is listening to what you're saying with respect to Norwich. So we'll see what happens. But Dre, what storylines do you think you're going to be drawn towards in the next week?
I'm just mostly paying attention to VAR. I think VAR has been huge, particularly this week, and I think going forward, as obviously decisions have to be made, people are really interested to see how that's going to go. So I think particularly in like handball situations, I wasn't too happy about how that went this week. The Lucas situation for Tottenham, Foden for City against Liverpool. Really would have liked to see that be 5-0. But yeah, I think it'll be really, really important going forward how VAR is handled.
Nice. Sam?
Yeah, I think Dre makes a really interesting point there. I'll be following that along as well. Personally, kind of looking to see how Liverpool respond after their unfortunate experience that Eddie had. I think Klopp will have him come back raring to go. And then, yeah, just following the race for the Champions League places and also the relegation. So I think there's kind of a lot happening at both ends of the table, and kind of every game counts at this point in time. So, yeah, looking forward to lots more soccer this week.
Yeah, we've got a lot going on. I know the Champions League schedules have been, and Europa League schedules have been released recently. And wow, from the 12th to the 23rd or so, I mean, that's a lot of very, very high-level football that's going to be played. So in the meantime, we're going to enjoy a lot of high-level football next week. There are going to be some interesting matches that come. So that wraps up our podcast today. We would like to thank Total Football Analysis. They are the world's largest open source soccer analyst community. please visit www.totalfootballanalysis.com. Join us next week. For now, bella ciao, ciao ciao.